everybody, it's Jo Perrott, founder of the Ladies Working Dog Group. Are you feeling stuck with your gun dog training? Trust me, you're not alone, and that's exactly why you need to be here. Every week, we're bringing you the best tips and hacks to make training your gun dog easy peasy. We'll keep it straightforward, no fuss, just actionable guidance that you can put straight to use. So let's get started. Hello, welcome to another episode of Found It, Fetched It. This week, we're going to be talking all about working with the dog in front of you and a deep dive into what that actually means. Joining me for this week's episode is LWDG Group Experts Jemma and Denya. Ladies, would you like to introduce yourselves to those who might not know who you are?
Hi, I'm Jemma Martin and I run Whistle and Wag Dog Training and we're based in Suffolk.
Hello, my name is Denya and with my husband John, we run Family Dog Services and we're based in Maidstone in Kent.
Fabulous. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more today about working with the dog in front of you. It's become an industry standard within the gun dog industry now. What do we mean when we say work with the dog in front of us?
It basically means to work with the individual personality of the dog. And I think, like you said, Jo, a lot of people say this now. They say that they work with the dog in front of them, but do they? To be able to work with the dog in front of you, you've got to be able to read the dog's body language, understand how the dog learns, to be able to see the reaction that the dog is having to the training process, and to have a multitude of tools in your toolkit to be able to adapt your training to work with that individual dog.
Yeah, I think it has become a phrase that everyone says now. And of course, everyone has to work with the dog in front of them because otherwise they're not training the dog, are they? So it's understanding what that means. And I think for us, it's a not one size fits all type of training. So a lot of trainers will have one method that they teach the dog how to do X, Y, and Z. And that's then what they apply to every dog they teach. Obviously, not all dogs are going to fall into that category. So that's what we mean when we say we're teaching the dog in front of us, because we might need to think outside the box for some dogs or modify an exercise to help a dog learn effectively on what we're trying to teach them and things like that.
I think for our members, we instill in them this understanding. You have to understand your dog's temperament. You have to understand your dog's abilities. You have to understand your dog's needs. And then we help them because they may not have the toolkit that an experienced trainer might have. They have you guys. So you guys are literally in their pocket, in their phone, in their online world, and able to say, use my experience to adapt your training this way. That's why we have life coaching. But let's talk about what we mean when somebody's got their first puppy and they're 12 weeks old or 8 weeks old in the house. What do we mean when we say to those people, work with the dog in front of you?
I would say for that new puppy first time owner, get to know your puppy, get to learn their personality, get to understand the most effective way that you can communicate with that puppy. Jem?
Yeah, exactly that. And work out what that individual puppy finds rewarding, because we know that building new behaviours with puppies, we need to build a reward history for them. Not all puppies will be as motivated by food as others. Some might like a fuss, some might play. And it's recognising when your puppy is in that right state to actually train and knowing your dog in that way.
So here we're talking about, and let's be really clear about this because this could be really confusing. We're not about saying, oh, let the dog rule your training sessions, rule your house. We're all about just getting to know what works for your dog and what doesn't work for your dog. So if I give an example in our house where I've got Ella, my daughter's got Buddy. Ella and Buddy is from the same litter. Ella needs one type of approach to our training. Buddy needs a very different approach. If you say to Buddy, he would like literally turn inside himself and die, that he'd let you down. If you say to Ella, she's yeah, whatever. So they are very different personalities, but they're from the same litter, same breeding. They're both Spaniels. I have to approach what I do with them very differently. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, we're saying get to learn and understand your puppy, your dog's personality, and what is most effective for that puppy or dog. And that might take a little bit of time. It might not happen overnight, because when you first bring that puppy home, you have no relationship with it yet. And it takes a few weeks for the puppy to settle and for you to start to see its true personality coming out. So during that time, it's working out who that puppy truly is and what it finds motivating.
Yeah, and I think you've spoke about this on other podcasts before, Claire, where you've talked about the cognition training in puppies and working out what type of dogs they are and how they learn and how they move through that. And I hate comparing dogs to people because we're very different, but it's the same sort of thing, how people learn in different ways. Some people like to do, some people like to read the theory, some people like to see a picture of it. And we've got to think of our dogs in the same sort of way. What kind of learner are they, and how can we effectively communicate with them to teach them these skills that we need them to do?
Yeah, because I think if we look back across gun dog training as a whole, certainly a while ago, it's getting far better now. But there used to be, like, you'd hear things like, oh, that dog's hard-headed, but still use this approach. Oh, that dog's soft, but still use this approach. There was never a change to the approach. It was just as if the dog had to mold itself or rechange itself to fit into the training. We say that's not needed anymore, and it isn't needed anymore, is it?
No, absolutely. And I think this is where, when you're training a dog, you've got to look, are you training an exercise, a thing, or are you working with behavior? Because they're quite different things. But when you're training an exercise, there will still be multitude of ways to train that exercise. But some trainers and some owners might have more ways of doing it than others, purely through their experience, really, the amount of dogs they've worked with over how many years and the challenges that they have seen. So for your first time dog owner, you can imagine how challenging that is. You are looking for the right resources of where to find that information on how to train that thing. And you want to make sure you're getting the right information. So that can be the very first challenge, is where that information is coming from. But yeah, then when you're training a thing, that dog's personality will have a massive bearing on how effective that training technique can be.
For our members, obviously, we set out the path for them. They have a plan, they can follow that, they have access to you guys. But I think if you're teaching your first dog yourself for the first time, you can do this. However, you just need to keep this in the forefront of your mind, that your dog's learning pathway, shall we say, without making it sound too like educational, is also going to change with their age. What works with a 12-month-old puppy and a 4-month-old puppy might not work out for the 14-month-old puppy.
Yeah, exactly that. Because as our dogs grow up and they get older, they might get braver, they might have experiences which affect how they deal with stuff. So I don't know, it might develop a phobia of something, which then changes how you deal with certain aspects. It might become so confident that you have to do other things to start reining it in a little bit and bring those boundaries back in. So as the dog does grow up and these changes happen, you are going to have to be fluid with your training and training approach, so that you are always teaching that dog in front of you. That dog isn't going to remain the same 10-week-old puppy throughout its whole life. It is going to change, and you're going to have to adapt with that. So that's why this phrase that we use becomes so important, so that you're adapting with your dog.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, we're not saying let them get away with things. We are saying you will just adapt your learning style to help them. And it's not just them, is it? We change as we learn more within the dog world.
Yeah, it's a really tricky one. Fluidity in your training is so important for you and the dog. But equally, it's recognizing if you've given something enough time, if you've been consistent enough in that thing, because some things the dog will learn very quickly. They have what we call a one-time learning event, where it's just, that's it, that's what they've learned. But there are other things that can take weeks, and some things that can take months to develop. So again, it's recognizing you might be making tiny little baby steps of improvement, but with some things you're not going to get from A to Z in one session. So it's recognizing that might take longer, but then recognizing if you're not making any forward motion, no improvements, perhaps that isn't working for the dog. So it's, again, that balance, isn't it, of, am I giving this the time to see if this can work for the dog, or is it not working for the dog and I need to change tact?
So if we likened it to, I don't know, maths. I hate maths, it drives me mad. But in school, I had a maths teacher and she would explain it one way and I just couldn't get it. My parents paid for a maths tutor for me. He'd explain it another way. And I got it more, but I still didn't completely get it. And for me, it's one of those things that I still struggle with today, believe it or not. And then for others, it might be something that they would have worked it out from the first teacher. It just depends on your ability to learn, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think even though myself, Claire and Sam all have the same sort of training ethos and we all train in a very similar way, the way we explain things is going to be different between the three of us. So one person might listen to me and go, oh, I have no idea what you've just said. Whereas another person will listen to Claire saying almost exactly the same thing, but it'll be said in such a way that makes sense to that person. It's the same as our dogs. We can be going for the same end goal, but we just go about it a slightly different route that makes sense to that dog.
We see this in heel work though, don't we? Like within our membership, we've got your amazing Pull Into Perfect masterclass, which people adore. And then we've got Sam's heel work class, which people adore. And they are both teaching the same topic, but people are very much Team Jem or Team Sam with their dog once they've tried both approaches. One might work straight away, one might not work, and then they'll go and use the other approach. And I think that's what we mean, without a doubt, about work with the dog in front of you, is finding what's right for your dog in order for them to learn and succeed.
Yeah, 100%, exactly that. And the heel work example is a really good one. And it's the same with John and I. We teach pretty much identically. We train our dogs almost identically, but it's not identical. There are tweaks that are different. But again, sometimes I might explain something to a client and exactly the same as what John said, but he says it slightly differently and it makes sense to them through John, or vice versa. And it's just, I think it's being able to not be offended by that as well. That's okay. The way that John describes things, he might describe it slightly differently to me, and that's okay. If we can reach enough people through all of us, that's great, isn't it? That's like, we're reaching more people because we are slightly different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think heel work is the maths of the dog world. I really do. It's just like one of those things. No dog wants to do it, maybe. No spaniel wants to do it. Even if they do it, they don't want to do it. Okay, so we're talking about like how an owner can adapt. And our members, if they're not really getting this, they have the capability of then speaking to you guys about one-to-one coaching and getting that as part of moving their dogs forward. For people who are like really struggling, working out what the dog in front of them needs, what do you recommend when it comes to finding a trainer? Because you could find a trainer, one size fits all, that might help, might not help. How do you find a dog trainer that understands to adapt training style to suit the dog?
I think this is a really tricky question, because it's almost as if you need to know someone that's had a dog like yours that's gone to that trainer. Obviously, I would without a doubt recommend Sam and Claire, because I know that they are capable of adapting their training styles and doing that with various different dogs, as I hope they would say the same about me. But looking at face value, when you're looking for a trainer, it's really hard to say from looking at a website or looking at their training videos that, oh, okay, I can see that they can adapt their method and train my dog in the way it needs to be trained. So it really is going to be based on recommendations, other people's experiences, videos of that trainer maybe working with different types of dog and giving examples on their social media or their website of them doing so. Claire, what do you think?
It is really tough. And I think one of the toughest things is finding a trainer who you can gel with and talk to very honestly. And I think that goes a long way. there's always all this conversation about qualifications or experience or both. But I think the most important thing is you've got to find a trainer who you can talk to honestly, that you trust them in what they're saying. But equally, there has to be the very transparent relationship, because for me, I might have 1,000 ways of teaching one exercise depending on the dog. But I'm very reliant on the handler telling me if something is or isn't working for them back at home, for me to know if I need to change something. Because I see that dog for a period of time with that handler, and it's only through the feedback I get from the handler and the results I can see with the dog, if I can know if the approach that I'm currently using with that dog is actually working. And if it isn't, I need the handler to tell me that. Because sometimes you do get dogs that will do things very well on the training field, but at home things are going very wrong, or vice versa. You can get other dogs where on the training field, or especially in a group class, the dog behaves one way, but at home they are behaving a different way. And so that honesty, that transparency in that relationship is very important, because if you cannot give that trainer that information, that feedback, they don't know if they need to change something. Does that make sense, Jo?
Yeah, and we always say to our members, and I'm sure at some point this will become industry standard as well, you don't know what you don't know. It'll probably change slightly, because that's very much my Welsh way of saying it. But it's a case of, how does the owner know what it should look like, especially when it's the first dog? But also, you might not be aware. Like for me, I'll take my son going to school. I used to pick up his reports and I'd go to his parents' evening, and they'd be like, he is the most perfect child we've ever seen. And I'm like, sorry, do you have the same child? And then he'd come home and he'd be a very different way. So yeah, I completely understand what you mean. In different situations and different environments, we work differently. But I think for an owner, because we're talking about owners at this point in the podcast, I think for an owner, is asking for that feedback, isn't it? With our members, we do certifications, they can do them in-house, so that we can say, yeah, you are doing really well on that, or maybe that little point of this needs to be tightened up a little bit. And that constant feedback, or feeding videos into our group, is you've always got the ability for peer pressure or group experts to feed back, and we need that, don't we?
Yeah, it's really important. Feedback is really important, and that works both ways. But definitely, I like getting video of how things are going and looking, because it gives me a little bit of an idea of how things are going in between the sessions. So that's really helpful. I quite like that. It works for me. Jem, do you do that? Do you to see that kind of stuff happening in between the sessions?
Yeah, I love getting videos with their sort of little bits of homework, and I think it keeps them motivated as well in between sessions. So they'll do a little bit and they'll send it in, and I'll go, oh, it's great, maybe work on this little bit. So they can keep that sort of journey going. And I think that's another reason why the group is really supportive of everyone, because you can share your journey and everyone gets to know where everyone's journey is, so they can go, oh, that bit was really good, that's much better than last week, have you tried working on this bit? So yeah, I think it's invaluable.
We've talked about the importance of feedback from friends, communities, groups, the peers around you. What do we do when we are trying our best to work with a dog in front of us, but the challenge is more than we can take on?
That's when you need to ask for help. That is when you need to reach out and ask for help. And I think that's the most important thing, is if you recognize that something with your dog isn't working, what you don't have to do is just ditch the trainer that you're working with. First thing should be, tell that trainer this isn't working, okay? And that trainer then should be able to help you find another route, another way of working with that dog. And if they can't, then that's obviously another conversation, isn't it? But the first thing is recognizing that and not being embarrassed and not feeling like you failed. I think so often people feel like they failed when the dog doesn't get it with this first technique they were given. But that's okay. And there's so many other ways of doing it. It's just recognizing that and reaching out for help. Jem?
Sorry, my dog has chosen now to roll around on its back and make a funny noise. If you hear anything, it's not me. Yeah, I think exactly that, Claire. And I think sometimes we've set the clients a bit of homework to go off and do something, and maybe it hasn't gone as well as we'd have hoped. And they are almost a little bit embarrassed to come back and go, oh, it's not really working how you said it might, or things like that. So yeah, definitely feel confident in going to your trainer and saying, it hasn't quite gone as I planned. Is there something else we can do? What would you suggest we do next? Do we need to take a step back? Because that trainer should be able to then adapt their training to help you move forward.
For me, that's so important. I think that it's developing that relationship between owner and trainer, where you're having these honest conversations, and the trainer might say to you, do you know what, you haven't given that enough time? Or they might say to you, actually, by now, I would have assumed that your dog would be reacting in this way. So they might then say, okay, let's have a look at how the dog is responding to what we're doing. And then from there, let's decide, do we need to change this tact, or is it just that we need to give it time, a bit more time? Because remember, consistency in training is really important. So it's then, there is this fluidity needed, isn't there, between trainer and owner of, okay, we've got to give it more time. We've not been consistent enough with this method, or acknowledging and accepting this isn't working for the dog's not happy, the handler's not happy. So now we need to change something. And that is when you start genuinely working with the dog and the owner in front of you.
Yeah, because this really is important, because like you said, it's not about chopping, changing. I remember like when I was first exposed to the gun dog world outside of my father training me, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to do this training. I'm going to do this training. You know, like literally clicker, whistle, positive only, bloody do this. The amount of stuff I was trying to do one time, I was confused. No wonder the dog was confused. Dog was probably a little bit like steady up on the changes here, because nothing could stick because I didn't give it time to. You have to be patient, don't we? When we say work with the dog in front of you, we mean have this consistency, have this patience, see if this works. If over time it doesn't work, then adapt your approach.
Yes, 100% that, Jem.
Exactly that. A lot of dog training with your own dog is going to be trial and error. What works, what doesn't, and finding the best route forward, either on your own or with a trainer supporting you through that process.
I think a few sort of podcasts that really, I think, support what we're talking about now is the square peg round hole, or round peg square hole, whichever way round that is. I never get that podcast, because I think it's understanding that not every dog suits every role that you might want it to. But then what we're talking about here is not just quitting on a dog because you think you've decided, oh, the dog can't do it, the dog's not good enough. And I think this is where training is so complex, and these conversations are so important, because you don't want to just quit on the dog, especially if your dog is also your family pet and you've got aspirations and dreams that you want to fulfill. But I think if you're working with a trainer and you are genuinely adapting to the dog, you will know the difference between a dog that's just taking longer to learn and understand, and the difference between maybe you need to change tact for the learning for the dog, and then perhaps that occasional, and I think this is occasional, in my experience, it's occasional where the dog really isn't suited. And I think for me, that's not a commonplace thing. For me, it's just a different technique or a different method or a different approach is far more commonly required, rather than it being that the dog can't do the job.
Fabulous. Thank you, ladies, for another amazing podcast. I think we've really covered the positive outcomes of working with the dog in front of you, how it will help you to build stronger bonds with them, better communication, and also how this approach can reduce frustration in yourself and in your dog. It is really important, as our experts have touched upon, to change your philosophy depending on the stage of your dog's training, your dog's age, and of course, what's going on with yourself. And to ask for feedback, ask for support where you're not really sure whether the approach you're taking is the correct approach for the dog. Listeners, we would love for you to review, subscribe, Give us your feedback. It is really important to us. Let us know what else you'd like us to chat about. We're always looking for new podcast episode titles, ideas. So we really do want to hear from you. Thank you, Gemma. Thank you, Claire, for another amazing podcast. And we are super excited to see you all. Have a fabulous week. And we look forward to speaking to you all next week. That's it for today's episode. A massive thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to head over to the LWDG and sign up for our membership. Get access to expert-led training, a wonderfully supportive community, and the resources you need to become a confident and skilled gun dog trainer. Let's take this journey together, because no woman should have to train her gun dog alone. We'll see you all next week.